Senator Richard Gordon will lead the chamber in prayer.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So we'll put ourselves in the presence of God, who is omnipresent anyway. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Almighty Father, we come here before you, imploring for wisdom and guidance so that the august chamber will truly become a senate of the people. With the onslaught of recent typhoons and the COVID-19 pandemic that has left many of our countrymen hungry, unclothed, and unsheltered, we ask for wisdom that we may come up with legislation that would ease the suffering of our constituents. We ask for guidance that we may serve our country well and according to your will. Give us fortitude that we may always place the national interest first rather than be swayed by influences from the powerful. As we go around the country, we can see people who have been impoverished even more into penury. And we can only pray for the light to be shown upon us by the Lord, that we see that light, to use it to uplift the dignity of our people and to give them better opportunities in the future. All these we ask to your Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem. The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara,
Present.
Binay,
Present.
Cayetano,
Present.
De Lima, De La Rosa,
Kailan yung...
Drilon,
Present.
Gatchalian, Go,
Present, always.
Gordon, Ontiveros,
Present.
Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao,
Present.
Pangilinan,
Present. Here.
Pimentel III,
Present.
Po,
Present.
Recto,
Present.
Revilla Jr., Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar,
Present.
Zubiri.
Present.
The Senate President Soto III is present.
Present.
With 6 senators physically present and 17 senators virtually present for a total of 23, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we dispense with the reading of the journals of the 27th session, November 24, 2020, the 28th session, November 25, 2020, and the 29th session, November 26, 2020, and consider them as approved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The journals are approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
The Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business, messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 25 November 2020, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 5328, an act establishing a national high school in Barangay Talogoy, Municipality of Malita, Province of Davao Occidental, to be known as Taimang Tribal National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Referred to the Committees on Basic Education and Finance.
House Number 5363, an act separating the Lawa National High School, Nueva Villa Extension in Barangay Lawa, Municipality of Don Marcelino, Province of Davao Occidental, from the Lawa National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Corona A. Cabanilla National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Refer to the Committees on Basic Education and Finance.
House Number 5364, an act separating the Don Marcelino National High School, Dalupan Extension in Barangay Dalupan, Municipality of Don Marcelino, Province of Davao Occidental, from the Don Marcelino National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Ernesto Balindan Sumbo National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Basic Education and Finance.
House Number 5367, an act separating the Basyawan National High School, Malagsom Extension in Barangay Buhangin, Municipality of Malita, Province of Davao Occidental, from the Basyawan National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Buhangin National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Basic Education and Finance.
House Number 7769, an act changing the name of San Manuel High School in Barangay San Manuel, City of San Jose del Monte, Province of Bulacan to San Manuel National High School.
To the Committee on Basic Education.
House Number 6444, an act declaring Torrijos White Beach, located in the municipality of Torrijos, Province of Marinduque, an ecotourism site and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Tourism, Environment, and Finance.
House Number 7736, an act declaring the municipality of Santo Domingo, Santa Catalina, Bantay, San Ildefonso, San Vicente, Sinait, Cabugao, San Juan, Masingal, and Kawayan, all in the province of Ilocos Sur as tourism destinations, providing for their development and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Tourism and Finance.
House Number 7737, an act declaring the municipality of Liliw in the province of Laguna as the Chinelas capital of the Philippines.
To the Committee on Tourism.
House Number 7732, an act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Santa Catalina, province of Ilocos Sur, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Finance.
House Number 7733, an act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in Baybay City, province of Leyte, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Finance.
House Number 7770, an act establishing the Kalinga Heritage Museum and Cultural Center in the city of Tabuk, province of Kalinga, defining its purposes and objectives and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Basic Education and Finance.
House Number 7772, an act declaring July 5 of every year a special non-working holiday in the municipality of Bambang, province of Nueva Vizcaya, to be known as Bambang Day in commemoration of its foundation anniversary.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Number 7773, an act declaring September 5 of every year a special non-working holiday in the municipality of Basista, province of Pangasinan, to be known as Basista Foundation Day in commemoration of its foundation anniversary.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Number 7774, an act declaring January 2 of every year a special non-working holiday in the municipality of Bonifacio, province of Misamis Occidental, to be known as Bonifacio Day in commemoration of its foundation anniversary.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Number 7775, an act creating barangays Akmak, Ditukalan, San Roque, Rinab, Upper Hinaplanon, and Ubaldo Laya, all in the city of Iligan.
To the Committees on Local Government and Electoral Reforms.
House Number 7776, an act declaring November 15 of every year a special non-working holiday in the province of Oriental Mindoro, to be known as Araw ng Oriental Mindoro in commemoration of its foundation anniversary.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Number 7777, an act declaring January 8 of every year a special non-working holiday in the municipality of Pavia, province of Iloilo, to be known as Pavia Day in commemoration of its foundation anniversary.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Number 7869, an act declaring March 2 of every year a special non-working holiday in the province of La Union, to be known as La Union Day in commemoration of its foundation anniversary.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Number 7783, an act mandating the establishment, management, maintenance, and regulation of a rainwater harvesting facility in all new institutional, commercial, industrial, and residential development projects in Metro Manila.
To the Committees on Public Works, Urban Planning, and Ways and Means.
House Number 7726, an act establishing the Forest Studies and Development Center in the Caraga State University, defining its functions and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
House Number 7798, an act establishing the Mindanao State University Lanao del Norte Agricultural College Arboretum in Barangay Ramain, Misaga, Dimaporo, province of Lanao del Norte, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Environment, Higher Education, and Finance.
House Number 7840, an act separating the Ifugao State University Potia campus in the municipality of Alfonso Lista, province of Ifugao, from the IFSU in the municipality of Lamut, province of Ifugao, converting it into a state college to be known as the Eastern Cordillera State College of Agriculture, Science, and Technology, ECSCAST, integrating therewith the IPSU Lupao campus, henceforth to be known as ECSCAST Lupao campus, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
House Number 7841, an act converting the Iligan State National School of Fisheries in Barangay Buruon, Iligan City, province of Lanao del Norte, into a Polytechnic State College to be known as the Iligan City Polytechnic State College, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance, Ways and Means, and Finance.
House Number 7879, an act establishing campuses of the University of Eastern Philippines in the municipalities of Allen, Victoria, and Labezares, province of Northern Samar, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Higher Education and Finance.
And House Number 7839, an act renaming the Quezon City General Hospital to Quezon City General Hospital and Medical Center, amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 537 as amended.
To the Committee on Health.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 25 November 2020, it designated Representatives Yap, Liachon, Romero, Romualdez, Bondok, Duabit, Herrera D, Madrona, Benitez, Arbison, Legarda, Singson, Mihan, Puno, Atienza Jr., Ermita Buhain, Martinez, Bernos, Salceda, Gatchalian, Paduano, and Lagman as its conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Distributing Provisions of House Number 7727, entitled An Act Appropriating Funds for the Operation of the Government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1 to December 31, 2021, and for other purposes.
To the Committee on Rules.
Bill on first reading, Senate Number 1935, an act institutionalizing anti-drug abuse councils in provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays, appropriating funds therefore for other purposes, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committees on Public Order, Local Government, and Finance.
Resolution, PS Resolution Number 584, resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an investigation in aid of legislation on the procedural or institutional bottlenecks that prevented the timely release of the COVID-19 hazard pay and special risk allowance rightly deserved by the country's valiant frontliners in order to prevent further problems in the release of their well-deserved compensation and to avoid making the same mistakes in the future, introduced by Senator Ontiveros.
To the Committee on Finance.
Committee Report Number 148, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality on Senate Number 1934, with Senators Ontiveros, De Lima, Marcos, and Pangilinan as authors thereof, entitled An Act Prohibiting Discrimination, Marginalization, and Violence Committed on the Basis of Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, Gender Expression, and Sex Characteristics, and providing sanctions therefore, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill Numbers 159, 412, and 689, sponsored Senator Ontiveros.
The calendar for ordinary business.
Additional reference of business.
There is additional reference of business.
Additional reference of business bills on first reading, Senate Number 1936, an act converting the Basilan State College in the city of Isabela, province of Basilan, into a state university to be known as the Basilan State University, and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Angara.
To the Committees on Higher Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Senate Number 1937, an act prohibiting untraceable firearms, providing penalties therefore, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Public Order.
Resolutions, PS Resolution Number 585, resolution honoring and commemorating the delegates to the constitutional conventions that transformed Philippine political landscape, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the 1971 Constitutional Convention, introduced by Senator Gordon.
To the Committee on Rules.
PS Resolution Number 586, resolution commending South Korean Ambassador Han Dong-man for his efforts in strengthening bilateral relations and cooperation between the Republic of the Philippines and the Republic of Korea, introduced by Senator Gordon.
To the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader. Order. Yes, it's done.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority
Mr. President,
Leader.
we have a bill
Yes.
for third reading. May we request the chamber with the permission of the body. I move for the voting on third reading of Senate Bill Number 1927. I so move, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Chair hears none. The Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
Senate Bill number 1927, an act authorizing the Department of Agriculture to use the annual tariff revenues in excess of 10 billion pesos under Republic Act number 11203, or an act liberalizing the importation, exportation, and trading of rice, lifting for the purpose the quantitative import restriction on rice, and for other purposes, for direct cash assistance to farmers owning 1 hectare or less of rice land until 2024. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon, Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel
yes.
III,
Yes.
Poe, Recto,
Yes.
Revilla Jr.,
Yes.
Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar,
Yes.
Zubiri,
Yes.
Senate President Soto III.
Yes. Okay. We count only those who are logged in or have videos on or responded. Hmm? With 19 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, Senate Bill 1927 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Oops. Mr. President, I think it's about voting.
Huh?
Yes, Mr. President.
Who is asking for? Senator Pangilinan and Drilon are raising their hands.
Yes, I will yield to the minority leader. He raised his hand.
Minority leader is recognized. Senator Drilon.
Mute.
Yes,
Please unmute.
yes, Mr. President, we just, parliamentary inquiry, how was my vote counted? There was an interruption in the transmission when the call was being made.
You voted yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Senator Pangilinan.
Yes, Mr. President, if I may be allowed to submit my written explanation of vote and that it be spread into the record. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, we place that on record. Senator
Mr. President, same question as Senator Drilon. There was also a lag, so I said yes, but I couldn't see my face, so I don't know if my vote was heard or counted. I did not turn my video off.
You counted. You voted in the affirmative.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right.
Aimee. Senator Aimee.
Senator
Aimee.
Senator Aimee Marcos did not vote.
I've been having a Wi-Fi problem, sir. I vote yes.
All right, we'll place that on record. Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Yes.
The leader is seeking the floor.
Thank you.
Senator,
Thank you very
yes.
much, Mr. President. May I just be allowed to make a short manifestation, Mr. President? Thank you. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the hearing on the of the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development, joined with the Committee on Foreign Relations and the Committee on Finance on the proposed establishment of the Department of Overseas Filipino workers, had been scheduled this morning. Let me put and place on record, Mr. President, even during the start of the hearing, that our goal is clear. We want to address the plight of our modern day heroes and to provide them with more and better services. We likewise express openness to the inputs of our colleagues and our resource persons in understanding whether addressing the gaps and loopholes in rendering service to the OFWs necessitates the creation of a separate department. Alam naman po ng lahat, Ginoong Pangulo, na simula po noong nakaraang Kongreso, patuloy na po nating tinatrabaho ang pagbabalangkas ng isang komprehensibong panukala para tugunan ang mga pangangailangan ng ating mga OFWs. We are also aware, Mr. President, and the Minority Leader reminded us that during the Senate deliberations of the 2021 budget, there are members of the Senate who shared their reservations on the creation of new departments, including the creation of the Department of Overseas Filipinos. On the record, Mr. President, the right sizing bill was also identified as part of the legislative agenda in the Philippine Development Plan for 2017 to 2020 and was also included in the SONA of the President. That being said, Mr. President, the Minority Floor Leader has moved to defer the hearing on the creation of the Department of Overseas Filipinos until the appropriate committee properly hears Senate Bill number 244 or the right sizing the National Government Act. Mr. President, upon the motion, we called for a caucus a while ago with our members of the committee, and in fact, the Minority Leader generously allowed the presentation of CABSEC Carlo Nograles with the latest developments in this Unified Administration Bill, which the Committee on Labor just received December 2 of this year. Following all this, Mr. President, the committee formally referred this motion to the Committee on Rules, and as stated time and again, Mr. President, that this representation would continue to submit to the wisdom of this body. So regardless, Mr. President, we are more than ready to tackle this measure on the proposed Department of Overseas Filipinos. And again, our dream for our OFWs is big, more than the assistance and services provided to them during pre-deployment and deployment. We believe that we must ensure full cycle upliftment on the improvement of the lives of OFWs and their families. Thank you, Mr. President. And again, we will continue to submit to the wisdom of the body. Thank you.
All right. So, in other words, the status is that it was referred to the committee, or a ruling was asked from the Committee on Rules.
Yes, it was referred. The motion was referred to the Committee on Rules.
All
Thank
right.
you,
Then,
Mr. President.
therefore, we hereby direct the Committee on Rules through the chairman, the Majority Leader, to fast track a decision on what to do
Yes, Mr.
with the
President.
question raised by the Minority Leader, so that
Actually,
we
Mr.
may be
President,
able to tackle that
yes.
already.
Mr. President, may I be recognized?
Yes, the
Mr.
Majority
President.
Leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, yes, I actually spoke with our Minority Floor Leader earlier about this his position on the Overseas Workers Bill, or the Department of Overseas Workers. What would happen is we would still have to deliberate it on the Committee on Rules, but what I would rather would have to happen would be to have a caucus, an all-member caucus, and decide as a group. Mr. President, it's the same. If there will be an appeal by our colleagues to push for this measure, we're going to put it on a vote on the Committee on Rules. I would rather just put it out on a caucus to allow our colleagues to individually weigh in on the issue. And maybe we can put a straw vote on those who feel that these two measures may be taken separately. The reason I raised this is because we run on a committee basis. The Senate runs on the committees, and so the committees have their sort of like sovereign right to bring out committee reports on the particular topics or the particular bills of their particular committee. So I don't want to weigh in and tell a committee chairperson what they can and cannot pass, Mr. President. So I don't want to be doing that as your chair and committee on rules. Although um, uh, maybe under a caucus we can actually iron that out. We can take up these two measures separately, or if the Senate President has made manifestation in the last week of our session, he mentioned that he would like to see the right sizing bill tackled as well, which is by the way under the committee of Senator Bong Revilla on civil service. So either way, Mr. President, we will have to make a decision if we table it or we tackle it. I don't want to make the decision for the chairpersons, Mr. President. That's what I'm saying. Maybe recognize the minority floor leader, Mr. President.
And the minority leader is recognized.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you very much. As we manifested during the formal committee meeting of the Committee on Labor this morning, what we are asking for is a ruling as to the priorities in our legislative agenda. We have noted the clear statement of the Senate President that he would prefer that the matter of the right sizing of the bureaucracy should be taken up first, and with reason and rationality, because we cannot imagine adding new departments and at the same time rationalizing our bureaucracy. And therefore, we have asked that a ruling from the Committee on Rules, because under the rules, the matter of the order and manner of transacting business is lodged as a matter of jurisdiction with the Committee on Rules. And also, by analogy, under our rules on legislative inquiry, there's a provision there which would allow or which would authorize or which would require the Committee on Rules to rule on this issue. So it is on that premise that we have proposed that we examine this closely, because the President himself, in two of the State of the Nation addresses, said we should rationalize our bureaucracy in the development plan. Again, part of the development plan is rationalizing our bureaucracy. So it is on this premise that we just submitted for a ruling of the Committee on Rules the matter of our legislative agenda and the manner of and the order of transacting business. And so that is all there is to it. If the Committee on Rules rule and makes a report then and adopted by the chamber, then that's it. We are not talking here about the merits or the demerits of the creation of the department. We're just talking about a policy that we should follow, given all of these circumstances. The fact that we are now we are now looking for funds. The pandemic is before us on COVID-19. So I believe that this rationality in straightening out our priorities, and that is all that we ask for. And the Committee on Labor during the caucus and confirmed in open hearing referred the issue to the Committee on Rules. Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing us to make that manifestation.
All right.
Mr.
Senator Ping Lacson is recognized.
Yes, Mr.
Senator
President.
Lacson, good.
The OFW and right-sizing bills are not the only measures affected by the policy issue raised by Senator Drilon. There's pending in the Committee on Defense and Security the disaster resilience bill that may also be affected by that policy issue or concern raised by the minority leader. So we should resolve this once and for all, which comes first, the right-sizing measure and the other measures affected by resolving the issue, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. The Committee on Rules will convene a caucus to discuss the matters that have been raised.
Mr. President,
Thank you.
I just got a
You're the
call
leader.
from Senator. I just got a call from the sponsor and author of the Overseas Filipino Workers Act, Senator Bongo, maybe he would like to manifest being the sponsor of this measure, Mr. President. May we recognize Senator Go?
Senator Bongo is
Oh,
recognized, and thereafter Senator Pia Cayetano is raising her hand.
Mr.
Is he
President,
online?
uh,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
President, good afternoon. This morning during the committee hearing, the Committee on Labor, it was explained by the Cabinet Secretary that the budget appropriated to agencies will be utilized for this new department and will no longer incur additional burden to our financial struggles. Rather, it will unburden our bureaucracy and streamline functions so we can respond better and properly maximize the resources we need. And it was mentioned by the President twice during his State of the Nation addresses, and also during one of his talk to the people. It is one of the priority bill of our president. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Senator Cayetano, Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a short manifestation. There is also pending Department of Culture. I filed that when I was in the House, and I think there was also one pending since last Congress in the Senate. So just to include that among the measures that will be tackled or studied by the Committee on Rules, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Majority Leader?
Yeah, just a manifestation, Mr. President. Yes.
Majority Leader, go ahead.
Yes, the statements of Senator Pia Cayetano and Senator Lacson indeed supports the proposition that the Committee on Rules should decide what should we do. Should we discuss? There are 7 bills calling for the creation of the departments. Should we tackle this? Because we will be subjected to pressure by each of the proponent of these 7 bills. And once should we take this up on the floor? That's all that I'm asking, that we should set our priorities. Should we first rationalize our bureaucracy, as the President has called for in his State of the Nation address in 2017 and 2019? Do we rationalize our bureaucracy as called for in the Philippine Development Plan? Or should we debate on the creation of 7 departments? That's the question that I'm raising, and the prioritization in our legislative agenda. The Senate President expressed his views very clearly, and therefore it's a matter that the chamber should decide after the Committee on Rules hears the issue as a committee having jurisdiction over this. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. President?
All right, Majority Leader.
Yeah. Mr. President, if I disappear, my internet is very bad now in Cagayan de Oro. I do not know why. So if I disappear, Mr. President, our Assistant Majority Leader is there anyway. He's Senator Joel to proceed with the meeting today and the proceedings. I will hear the matter to hasten the proceedings. I'll just call for a hearing on the issue, and we can invite the members of the Committee on Rules as well as the members who authored these measures so that they can weigh in on the proposal. My understanding is this measure, particularly on OFWs, is a priority measure of the President. I think in the last 3 State of the Nation addresses, he's mentioned it. And there's already a counterpart bill that's already approved in the House. So tayo na lang po hinihintay nila. Yung right sizing bill, I do not know if there is already a counterpart measure approved in the House. So we will discuss it and look at all the issues at hand, and hopefully come up with a draft ruling to present to all our members, Mr. President.
All right. Let's move on, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Moving on. I move, Mr. President, that we, with the permission of the body, that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 585. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the consideration is in order.
May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure, Mr. President?
Secretary will read the title of the rest.
Resolution honoring and commemorating the delegates to the constitutional conventions that transformed Philippine political landscape, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the 1971 Constitutional Convention.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, may we recognize the distinguished sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Forgive my errors because I've been so busy up to my neck trying to alleviate the conditions of our people in the different areas that have been affected. Mr. President, I'd like to rise in honor of all the delegates to the constitutional conventions of the past and the constitutional commissions as well. To be sure, we had the 1935 Constitution and the 1971 Constitution Convention. All of these people were elected, and the 1986 Constitutional Commission, Mr. President. Mr. President, one of the great statesmen of America, Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers, if you may say, said that what is the most sacred duty and the greatest source of our security in a republic? And the answer was an inviolable respect for the Constitution and laws, Mr. President. We've seen a lot of twists and turns experienced in our constitutional experience. We've seen it set aside by the declaration of martial law. We've seen constitutions made by elected delegates and appointed commissioners, Mr. President. The Constitution, Mr. President, is the bedrock of the Republic. It's a fundamental law of the land, and its writing is an act of freedom, coming together the past, present, and future of the nation, and the great expectations of the people. It is the evolving history of the Filipino people. It is therefore important for the youth, especially the youth and the country and all of the citizens, to look into constitutional history so that when the future calls for a revision or amendment of the Constitution, they can truly improve on it. It is important to commemorate in schools and other educational institutions the various dates of completion of the constitutional conventions and commissions work or ratification of our Constitution, such as February 8 for the 1935 Constitution. It is also the birthday of Claro M. Recto, the grandfather of one of our colleagues, January 17 for the 1973 Constitution, and February 2 for the 1987 Constitution. Our constitutional conventions, Mr. President, have become the breeding ground for illustrious names in Philippine politics, legal luminaries and respected leaders that guided the country in the course of history. Mr. President, in our history, in the 1935 alone Constitution, we had 3 presidents. Can you imagine that? President Jose Laurel, President Manuel Rojas, President Elpidio Quirino. We had 2 Senate presidents, Senate President Camilo Osias, Senate President Mariano Jesus Cuenco. We had 24 senators later on. Senate President Pro Tempore Jose Clarin, Senator Claro M. Recto, Senator Filemon Yap Soto, Senator Vicente Soto. I believe both are related to our Senate President. Senator Mario Guariña, Senator Nicolas Buendia, Senator Jose Altavas, Senator Jose Hontiveros. I have not had time to find out whether he's related to our own Senator Risa Hontiveros. Senator Vicente Francisco, a renowned author of the Rules of Court. Senator Filemon Soto, I've already mentioned that. I'm sorry. That's why I asked for an earlier pardon for some of my errors. Senator Tomas Confesor of Iloilo. Senator Alauya Alonto. Senator Tomas Cabili, who died, I believe, with the President Magsaysay in a plane crash way back in 1957. Senator Jose Asamis, whose son was my colleague in the Constitutional Convention in 1971. Senator Jose Locsin, Senator Pedro Hernandez, Senator Hermenegildo Villanueva, Senator Jose Romero, Senator Jose Alejandrino, Senator Vicente Roberto Montinola, Senator Teodoro Sandico, Senator Rafael Palma, who had something to do with the writing if I'm not mistaken, of our national anthem in Spanish, later translated by another delegate, Camille Osias, into Tagalog, Mr. President, or English. Mr. President, there have been several Supreme Court justices in the 1935 Convention. Justice Manuel Briones, Supreme Court Justice Norberto Romualdez, Supreme Court Justice Manuel Briones, Supreme Court Justice Alejo Labrador, who comes from my own province, Supreme Court Justice Gregorio Perfecto, Mr. President. And of course, a war hero by the name, one of my heroes, who should be a national hero, the youngest delegate of the Constitutional Convention, great debater, a great visionary, who thought of Mafilindo and who thought of making sure that we have a national language in Bahasa, rightly or wrongly, and then who fought against the Japanese, one of the first to drive the Japanese away when the Japanese arrived, and later on executed with practically most of all the members of his family, and was never found, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, in the 1971 Constitutional Convention, Mr. President, I can tell you right away, we have had several folks, Mr. President. We had two presidents in that Constitutional Convention. President Carlos P. Garcia, President Diosdado Macapagal, before whom who took his oath of office before me as the youngest delegate of the Constitutional Convention at that time. What a great honor for me! And let me just say that we also had a Senate President in Tito Gingona Jr. I'm sorry, three Senate presidents: Chief Justice Marcelo Fernan, who later on became also a Chief Justice. Sorry, Senate President Aquilino Pimentel, the father of Coco. Senator President Edgardo Angara, the father of our current senator. Teofiso Gingona Jr. became Vice President, Mr. President. We had 9 senators: Senator Rosario Lim, yours truly, Senator Gordon, Senator Raul Banglapus, Senator Sotero Laurel, Senator Teofiso Gingona Jr., the late respected colleague of ours, Senator Raul Rocco, Senator Damacao Alonto, Mr. President, and Senator Harrison Alvarez, who recently passed on, and Senate Minority Floor Leader, and later Supreme Court Justice, if I'm not mistaken, Stanislao or Taning Fernandez. Mr. President, we have had several Chief Justices, as I pointed out. Chief Justice Pedro Yap, Chief Justice Jose Yolo Jr., Chief Justice Hilario Davide Jr. And of course, we had several Supreme Court Justice Jose Feria, Supreme Court Justice Abraham Sarmiento, Supreme Court Justice Fidel Purisima, and Supreme Court Justice Adolfo Ascuna. Mr. President, so far as the 1986 Constitutional Commission, there was one Chief Justice, Hilario Davide, who was once again constitutional lawmaker, June Davide, and 5 senators, Mr. President. We just honored Cecilia Munoz Palma as proposed by our distinguished colleague, the Minority Floor Leader, Franklin Drilon, and of course, Justice Adolfo Ascuna was also a member of the 1971 Constitutional Convention, and of course, Justice Flores Regalado, Dean of the San Beda Law School, and Florida Ruth Pineda Romero, who was my sorority's sister from the Sigma Delta Pi, and certainly one of the great civil lawyers of our country. We also had the Senate President, Mr. President, from the Constitutional Commission, Senate President Blas Ople, Mr. President, and of course, member of the Cabinet. There were 5 senators that came out of there. Again, Senator Ambrosio Padilla, Senator Domacao Alonto, and Senator Lorenzo Sumulong, and Senator Francisco Rodriguez. In the 1971 Constitution, because most of the 1935, I think, have expired, practically all, in the 1971 Constitution, there are quite a few people who are still around and approaching senior citizenship, including this representation, Mr. President. Members of the 1971 Constitutional Convention who celebrated the 50th anniversary of their election to their convention are still living today. Tito Gingona, yourself, yours truly, Elizabeth Johnson, Elizabeth Chombian, Ding Quintos, Ricardo Quintos, Lilia de Lima, Jose Levi, Amado Tolentino, Gary Teves, a former Secretary of Finance, a very, very distinguished gentleman from Laguna, Quezon, Leandro Garcia, Sonia Aldeguer, a nun, Ernesto Amatong, former congressman and governor of Zamboanga del Norte, Teresita Flores, former COMELEC commissioner, Mary Rosa Spileta, Ricardo Segmit from Pampanga, Gonzalo Jun Catan, Manuel Molina from Cagayan, Victor Ortega, Mr. President, who was governor also of La Union, Maria Clara Lubrigat, who was congresswoman of Zamboanga City, Zamboanga, Antonio Araneta, who was also a delegate, and Gemma Cruz Araneta. I'm just trying to recall, Mr. President. Michael Mastura, again, a very distinguished Muslim Filipino. Ray Villar, who was formerly constitutional, who was formerly commission on audit, and Natalio Castillo, among other people, Mr. President. It is most stressfully submitted, therefore, Mr. President, that we can take a page from all these folks here. Of course, our distinguished Senate President has followed the footsteps and picked up the standard after his forebears passed on. He is now our Senate President. And there are many others. Our President pro tempore is the grandson of Claro Mayo Recto, Mr. President. And of course, there are many others here. I have had limited time to really look at the list, but these are people who served in the three constitutional amendment exercises of our country. It is likely submitted that the following dates of completion of the Constitutional Convention's work or ratification of our constitutions be celebrated by meaningful discussions in schools and other educational institutions. I remember when I was a young man, not too very long ago, Mr. President, Constitution Day. And that is why it was called Constitution Day, because the father or the head of the seven wise men of the 1935 Constitution is the grandfather of our very own Senate President pro tempore. And February 8 was the birthday of Claro Mayo Recto, Mr. President. January 17, we celebrate the 1973 Constitution. I dare say it wasn't. It was a very good Constitution, except perhaps for the very controversial transitory provisions. And then February 2 for the 1987 Constitution. Mr. President, for all these reasons, for the reasons that the young people should remember this and engage in constitutional discussions whenever they can. For the very fact that from time and again there have been attempts to change the Constitution. Some they say for personal reasons, some they say because we need to change the Constitution because we have to fine-tune it, Mr. President. For the part of the United States, I really don't subscribe to just aping other constitutions. They changed it by amendments, Mr. President. And there could be ground, therefore, for an intelligent discussion of the history of constitution making in this country. In fact, Mr. President, I'd be willing to take in an amendment because the Malolos Constitution trade was not part of this, mainly because at that time we were not recognized as a state. But if anybody here so desires, we can also include that constitutional exercise in Malolos in 1898 or in 1896, Mr. President. Mr. President, for all those reasons, I respectfully submit this resolution for the favor of our colleagues in the Senate. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Francis Tolentino is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Perhaps this is just a manifestation, but later on, if the good sponsor would yield to 2 questions or 3, it would be a pleasure on the part of this representation. Mr. President, when the good gentleman was delivering his speech, I happened to have in my table, I don't know why, several Senate resolutions emanating from the 4th Congress to the 7th Congress of the Philippines, Mr. President. And these are resolutions that would probably lead to the resolution being proposed now by the good gentleman from Zambales. First in my possession, Mr. President, is Senate Joint Resolution number 1, 4th Congress, 1st session, introduced by Senator Ambrosio Padilla, Mr. President. And then there is another resolution to show the progression of what the good gentleman from Zambales propounded a while ago is a resolution from the 5th Congress, first session, by former Senator Arturo Tolentino, calling for the election and holding of constitutional convention and for other purposes. This was dated March 2, 1962. In my possession, Mr. President, I showed this to Senator Villanueva, and lo and behold, during those days when they received resolutions, they do not just have a date and time, but the figure of the watch clock itself, Mr. President. So this is March 2, 1962. On the third resolution is a resolution coming from the 5th Congress, second session, authored by Senators Ferdinand Marcos, Senator Fernandez, Manglapus, De La Rosa, Rodrigo, Manahan, Ucias, Cuenco, Padilla, and Katigbak. This was 1963, Mr. President. And then, as part of the historical backdrop, again, on the 7th Congress, Mr. President, there is a resolution filed by Senator Perez. I'm sure this is Senator Leonardo Perez from Nueva Ecija, the former chairman of the Commission on Elections. Nueva Vizcaya, I was corrected, Mr. President, and this was filed May 22, 1970. And this was a prelude, Mr. President, to the Constitutional Convention, which the good gentleman from Zambales was elected as a delegate, Mr. President. So these are all historical backgrounds showing the progression through the years starting from 1962 to 1970, wherein it culminated in the election of delegates to the Constitutional Convention, June 1, 1971. 3 questions, Mr. President, to the good gentleman, if he would yield to some questions. Is the gentleman...
Willingly, Your Honor.
Yes, mention was made a while ago that the fundamental law of the United States appears to be immutable. Would the gentleman agree that the purpose of a constitutional convention is to amend and adapt the charter to current changes in society?
Yes, Your Honor, that would be one of the reasons for that, Mr. President. For example, there is an amendment in the Constitution on the right to bear arms in the American Constitution. That's by reason of their concern that the federal government might become a dictatorship and that the citizen has the right to bear arms to protect the country against invasion and against a tyrant, Mr. President. There are also other amendments, such as the amendment on race, Mr. President. There are many other amendments that they make adjustments for, Mr. President, which I think it would be interesting for all of us to learn and for our children and our grandchildren to learn. I would like to just make an amendment, just a statement. I forgot to mention that Senator Arturo Tolentino was also a Senate President, Mr. President. He was in the 1935 Constitution. So I just thought I'd include him. And that I'd like to reiterate that on June 1, 2021, will be our 50th anniversary, Mr. President. And that's why I also wanted to say that we want to honor the delegates still living today. I don't need to be honored, but my other friends need to be honored, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, my second question, I promise to limit myself to 3. Is it now the point of the good gentleman in commemorating the deeds of the delegates coming from the Constitutional Convention of 1971 to remember them not just for amending the Constitution, to remember them for their vision on how this republic should evolve? And principally, Mr. President, the good gentleman is part of that Constitutional Convention. Is it now worth saying that because of the good deeds of the delegates, 10, including the members of the Constitutional Commission, that we now have a very enduring and stable democratic republic because of the changes made, Mr. President?
Mr. President, far be it from my mind to pat ourselves on the back, although I said it was a good constitution, save for the transitory provisions. We had our good guys and sometimes not so good guys in the constitution. We had our scandals out there also, Mr. President. And part of this, the intention is to make sure that the young people in particular can look at the backdrop, you know, like in Charles Dickens, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. His preliminary paragraph in that book, Mr. President. It should say that this is the time at that time. And for whatever reason you may want to question, I remember I was one of those, I was still in UP, along with Ed Hobson, who was in Ateneo. And we had formed La Casdiva with Ed Garcia at the time. And we led the effort to try and get a non-partisan constitutional convention, Mr. President. Of course, we were not doing so badly, but we were also in a slow mode, so much so that the late President Marcos eventually declared martial law, and he took in most of the provisions of the Constitution and added the transitory provisions, mainly because he felt that martial law needed that. And Mr. President, I'm not ashamed that of our history, because Americans have also declared martial law many, many times. I don't favor it, and I would like to emphasize that I do not favor it. But since it's part of our Constitution, it's always there for us to learn more from. And so the answer to your question is, we learned from the 1935 Constitution. We were in a hurry. One of the things that I learned from the 1935 Constitution is we had the vision to say we'll be independent by 1946. We forgot that there was a war that was going to happen. And when that war happened, when we got our independence, we were devastated, and we did not get the largesse of America in trying to rebuild our nation. In fact, most of that largesse went to Japan and Germany, Mr. President. And we did not take part, we did not really enjoy what we should have enjoyed, that is the freedom to protect our natural resources, our forests, our mines, and certainly our laws, Mr. President. So these are things that I think, in answer to your question, life is like that, up and down, good and bad, but you need to learn from the past, otherwise we cannot go to the future, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. From the explication of the good gentleman from Zambales, it would appear that based on his experience and the historical antecedents that he mentioned, that amending the Constitution should be done following the American model, which he mentioned a while ago, the right to bear arms, which is subsumed in Amendment number 2, should be done incrementally, Mr. President. And because of his mention of the environment, my last question would focus on certain items not detailed specifically in our 1987 Constitution, recent developments in energy, conservation, environment, digital technology, cryptocurrency, among others. And my final question, Mr. President, to the good gentleman, is it now the proper time to consider all of these amendments, all of these innovations, all of these changes in our society, including the global order? Is it now time, Mr. President, that we should likewise amend as we reminisce the 1970s with the good gentleman being a delegate therein? Is it now the time? Is there a time? Is there a good time to amend an existing constitution? I'm referring to the 1987 Constitution, Mr. President. My final question to the delegate to the 1971 Constitutional Convention, Mr. President.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. It would have to be a decision made by the people. That's why we have provisions in the Constitution that we have to go to a plebiscite whenever we draft the Constitution, either as a designating the Congress as a constitutional convention, Mr. President, or you need also the people to amend the Constitution by way of a plebiscite, Mr. President, by way of elected delegates, as 1935 was, Mr. President. Of course, Mr. President, I would make haste slowly. For example, I'm thinking that perhaps one of these days you might have an amendment to the American Constitution under Electoral College. But I have not seen a swelling of that. There's a divided country, Mr. President. And you can see throughout constitutional history, the right of the basic rights are in Article 1, which was not, by the way, included in the original Constitution of America. Number 2 is the right to bear arms and the formation of a militia. And, you know, smarting from their British occupation, no soldier shall be in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. These are things that they learned throughout their history, because the British at that time were stationed in the houses of the colonials, the colonials, Mr. President, the subject of British occupation, and even the right against unlawful searches and seizures, Mr. President, is in Amendment 4. Amendment 5 is there is a jury trial and also, with exceptions of wartime, etc. And then Amendment 6, and there are so many amendments, Mr. President. All criminal prosecutions, the client shall enjoy the right to a speedy public trial. This is the due process clause in the Constitution, Mr. President. You see, it wasn't perfect the moment they made it, but they kept fine-tuning it, Mr. President, strengthening it, buttressing its ramparts for democracy, Mr. President. They even have a right of trial by jury, and and no person can go to jail for that. Excessive bail in 8 Article Amendment 8, in Article 9, it should not be the enumeration in the constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Article 10, it goes down to the powers that delegated to the United States by the Constitution are prohibited by it are reserved to the states, which is the very origin, I suppose, of the Electoral Tribunal, Mr. President. There have been many others, Mr. President, and you can see they adjust. Even I think, if I remember correctly, after the Civil War or before the during the Civil War, there were attempts to try to amend the Constitution, Mr. President. The right of citizens, Mr. President. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity. The saying is they keep trying to fine-tune it, and here you go. Amendment 13, I was looking for this. This is Section 1. Neither is slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment or crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. When was this passed, Mr. President? 1866. And yet it took Martin Luther King 100 years later and Lyndon Baines Johnson to finally equalize the races in America. And up to now, they still say Black Lives Matter, Mr. President. They keep on fine-tuning the Constitution. And if you look some more, the 14th Amendment on citizenship, Mr. President. We have that as well. And we have amended that from 1935 to 1971, Mr. President. And also no denial of votes, or neither because race, color, or previous condition of servitude. And then 16, Mr. President, I'm just doing this not to, I'm actually producing it. The power to collect taxes. They didn't have an income tax, Mr. President, until I think in the 1912s. That's when they started collecting income taxes, Mr. President. I guess many of us are not aware of it, but that's a simple fact. If you go on, Mr. President, to Article 18, the manufacture, sale, or transportation. This is the Halsted Act, if I'm not mistaken, where they banned intoxicating liquors, Mr. President. That led to Al Capone. That led to the untouchables, Mr. President, so-called in American fiction or non-fiction, or whatever you decide. And again, so many things. No gender imposition, Mr. President. Everybody can vote irrespective of sex. Remember, the suffragettes really had a tough time trying to get that in. And then Article 20, Amendment 20, terms of the President Vice shall end at noon. And now they're going to have a problem because Trump has not conceded yet. So, like I said, all this might lead to another amendment to the Constitution of America, Mr. President. And if you continue on, they even adjusted that it will end at noon, Mr. President, of the last day of the presidency. And the moment they leave, they start taking out the stuff of the sitting president. And then Article 21, in terms of a ban on intoxicating liquors in violation of the laws thereof, Mr. President. And then 22, again, it's just like our provision in our Constitution. No president shall be elected more than twice. And we have that in our Constitution, but in different intentions, Mr. President. And then Article 23, 1960, creating the seat of government, Washington, D.C., if I'm not mistaken. I may be mistaken here. I'm not familiar with this very well. They shall be designating an equal number the senators and representatives in Congress. And then 24, Mr. President, the rights of citizens to vote in any primary or other election, president or vice president. You can see most of it are political in nature, Mr. President. They make amendments because sometimes the politics simply doesn't work. And in case of the removal of the president from office, or the vice president shall become president, meaning to say the president must run with the vice president na kasama niya. So, hindi pwedeng maglalaban-laban yung president at vice president. And 26, 80 years old to vote. We have that in our Constitution. The right of 18-year-olds to be able to vote. And Mr. President, this was originally proposed in 1789 and ratified in 1992. And you see, no law varying the compensation for the service of senators and representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened, Mr. President. So you can see so many amendments at different times in their history, reacting to those amendments, but not overhauling the Constitution, Mr. President. I think that's what I worry about when we say we will amend the Constitution. There must be some preparation or a specification. And that's why I always say, let's not make haste slowly. Let us make, if we have to make haste, let's do so slowly, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really promise that I'll have just 3 questions. I thank the good gentleman for sponsoring this resolution. I join him in commending the delegates of the Constitutional Convention. I request that I be co-author likewise in that resolution. But I am now on the verge of asking a 0.5 question, Mr. President, which I will not seek an answer from the good sponsor. Perhaps it's about time that we think of the idea of incorporating not just treaties within our Constitution as part of the law of the land, but even arbitral rulings coming from international tribunals, and that perhaps would reshape and finalize the metes and bounds, the boundaries of our archipelagic islands, and probably that would highlight the real boundary of the Philippines insofar as the West Philippine Sea or the South China Sea is concerned. I will not seek an answer from the good gentleman, and I thank him for sponsoring this resolution, which I would like to be a co-author. And Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your sponsor is willing to make anybody who's interested in co-authoring or co-sponsoring this proposal, Mr. President. I'm a very transparent person. I also offered to amend the Constitution, albeit in part, Mr. President, particularly on the economic provisions of the Constitution regarding ownership of land, Mr. President, so that we could get more investments, Mr. President. So there are other times also when I attempted to say that, and I don't want to discuss it here because it's going to take us long, but the point here, Mr. President, is that there's nothing that prohibits us from amending the Constitution so long as we go into it, not with our eyes closed, not in the spirit of bahala na, but to be very deliberate and to make sure that if we and when we do amend, we will do it cogently, Mr. President. By the way, Mr. President, this honors all the constitutions. This resolution honors all the constitutional exercises so that they will be remembered February 8, January 17, and June 1 for the 1971 Constitution. And if anybody wants to amend, we can include the Constitution, although that was espousing a dictatorship, Mr. President, the Aguinaldo Constitution, if you will, which was never recognized, Mr. President, by the whole world. So that's why we tread softly on that measure, Mr. President.
Mr. President, we recognize Senator Risa.
Majority Leader.
Senator Drilon and Senator Ontiveros would like to be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Dillon, the Minority Leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is not actually a question, but given the limitations of our electronically conducted hearings and sessions, I must confess that I haven't read the resolution, but I rely on the good judgment of the gentleman from Zambales that this resolution is worth action on the part of the Senate. But having said that, Mr. President, would the Honorable Senator Gordon object to our request that the resolution be read? Because we haven't read it, and I do not know, and as I said, we rely on the good judgment of Senator Gordon, but just for the record, if it is not very lengthy, can the Secretary be directed to read the resolution before we, because of our limitation on the electronic method of conducting our session. Thank you, Mr. President.
If there is no objection, we direct the Secretary to read the resolution, the entire text of the resolution.
Ngayon lang pala.
585, yeah.
Whereas the Constitution is the bedrock of the Republic and its writing is an act of freedom, coming together in the past, present, and future of the nation and the great expectations of the people. It is the evolving history of the Filipino people. Whereas it is important for the youth to look into constitutional history so that when the future calls for a revision or an amendment to the Constitution, they can improve on it. Whereas it is important to commemorate in schools and other educational institutions the various dates of completion of the Constitutional Convention's work or ratification of our constitutions, such as February 8 for the 1935 Constitution, which is also the birthday of Claro M. Recto, January 17 for the 1973 Constitution, and February 2 for the 1987 Constitution. Whereas our constitutional conventions became a breeding ground for illustrious names in Philippine politics, legal luminaries, and respected leaders that guided the country in the course of its history. Whereas the 1934 Constitutional Convention was composed of great men and women, with its president, renowned statesman Senator Claro M. Recto. It is known for its 7 wise men of the Constitutional Convention, which prepared the final draft, namely Senator Filimon Soto, the Supreme Court Justice Norberto Romualdez, President Manuel Rojas, Senator Vicente Singson Encarnacion, Supreme Court Justice Manuel C. Briones, Central Bank Governor Miguel Cuaderno, and Filipino statesman Conrado Benitez. It also has Senator Vicente Soto, who was elected chairman of the Committee on Style and was a member of the Committees on Preamble, Nationalization of Public Utilities, and Impeachment, Senator Ruperto Montinola, who is the convention's first vice president, Senator Teodoro Sandico, who is the convention's second vice president, Narciso Pimentel is the convention's secretary, Senator Rafael Palma, and Wenceslao Vinsons, who was the youngest delegate. Whereas the 1934 Constitutional Convention became the breeding ground for esteemed legislators and magistrates such as Senate President Camilo Ocias, Senate President Mariano Jesus Cuenco, Senate Pro Tempore Jose Clarin, Senator Mario Guariña, Senator Nicolas Buendia, Senator Jose Altabas, Senator Jose Ontiveros, Senator Vicente Francisco, Senator Filimon Soto, Senator Tomas Confesor, Senator Alauya Alonto, Senator Tomas Cabile, Senator Jose Ozamis, Senator Jose Locsin, Senator Pedro Hernáez, Senator Hermenegildo Villanueva, Senator Jose Romero, Senator Jose Alejandrino, Senator and Supreme Court Justice Manuel Briones, Speaker of the House Cornelio Villarreal, Supreme Court Justice Alejo Labrador, and Supreme Court Justice Gregorio Perfecto. Whereas, of the 202 delegates to the 1934 Constitutional Convention, 3 became presidents of the Philippines, namely President Jose Laurel, President Manuel Rojas, and President Elpidio Quirino. Whereas the 1971 Constitutional Convention, like the 1934 Constitutional Convention, became a breeding ground for key political leaders and statesmen, such as Vice President Teofisto Gingona Jr., Chief Justice Pedro Yap, Chief Justice Hilario Davide Jr., Supreme Court Chief Justice Jose Yulo Jr., Senate President and Chief Justice Marcelo Fernan, Senate Minority Floor Leader and Supreme Court Justice Estanislao Fernandez, Senate President Aquilino Pimentel, Senate President Edgardo Angara, Supreme Court Justice Jose Feria, Supreme Court Justice Abraham Sarmiento, Supreme Court Justice Fidel Purisima, Supreme Court Justice Adolfo Ascuna, Court of Appeals Justice Teresita Flores, Court of Appeals Justice Alfredo Lagamon, Sandigan Bayan Justice Anacleto Badoy Jr., Assemblyman Antonio Tupas, Assemblyman Antonio Raquiza, Assemblyman Rustico de los Reyes, Senator Roselier Lim, Senator Sotero Laurel, Senator Raul Manglapus, Senator Raul Rocco, Senator Ahmad Damakaw Alonto, Senator Hierson Alvarez, and Senator Gordon, its youngest delegate. Whereas 2 former Philippine presidents headed the 1971 Constitutional Convention as convention presidents, President Carlos P. Garcia and President Diosdado Macapagal. Whereas the 1986 Constitutional Convention, like the 1934 and the 1971 Constitutional Conventions, was composed of men and women of great legal acumen and outstanding leaders such as Supreme Court Justices Cecilia Muñoz Palma, Supreme Court Justice Adolfo Ascuna, Chief Justice Hilario Davide, Supreme Court Justice Florida Ruth Pineda Romero, Supreme Court Justice Florence Regalado Jr., Court of Appeals Justice Regalado Maambong, Senate President Blas Ople, House Speaker Jose Laurel Jr., Senator Ambrosio Padilla, Senator Ahmad Damakaw Alonto, Senator Lorenzo Sumulong, Senator Francisco Rodrigo, Assemblyman Rustico de los Reyes Jr., and Jose Luis Martin Gascon, its youngest delegate. Whereas it is important to look into our past and honor the great men and women delegates of our constitutional conventions, some of whom are still living, for their work for the country and to pass and continue their legacy and example to our youth. Whereas, by inculcating in our citizenry, especially the youth, the examples of the delegates of our constitutional convention, we may be able to develop among them an active and knowledgeable citizenry who are advocates of democracy and liberty, and who will be stewards of our country by being active in public discourses about our current predicaments and the future in order to build a national consensus thereon. Whereas on June 1, 2021, the 1971 Constitutional Convention will have its 50th anniversary. Whereas the number of the 1971 Constitutional Convention delegates are still living today, such as Vice President Teofisto Gingona Jr., Senator Richard Gordon, Elizabeth Johnston, Ricardo Quintos, Lilia de Lima, Jose Leviste, Amado Tolentino, Gary Teves, Leandro Garcia, Sonia Aldiguer, Ernesto Amatong, Teresita Flores, Mary Rose Espeleta, Ricardo Sagmit, Gonzalo Catan Jr., Manuel Molina, Victor Ortega, Maria Clara Lobregat, Antonio Araneta, Michael Mastura, Reynaldo Villar, and Natalio Castillo, among others. Now, therefore, be it resolved as it is hereby resolved by the Senate of the Philippines in deep recognition of the contribution of constitutional conventions in shaping Philippine history and future honors and commemorates the delegates to the 1934, 1971, and 1986 constitutional conventions in shaping the Philippine history. Resolved finally that the following dates of the completion of the constitutional convention's work or ratification of our constitutions be declared by meaningful discussions in schools and other educational institutions, particularly February 8 for the 1935 Constitution, January 17 for the 1970 Constitution, and February 2 for the 1987 Constitution.
Mr. President.
Yes, Minority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for allowing that to be read on the record. And indeed, my assessment was correct that Senator Gordon will never allow this chamber to be put in an embarrassing position insofar as approval of resolutions are concerned. Thank you very much for having the resolution read into the record, and with what was read, we may request that we be made co-author and would endorse its approval. Thank you very much.
All right. If there is no objection to Senator Gordon, we make the Minority Leader a co-author. There is just one slight question.
In
the last whereas, you mentioned names of those who are still living, members of the 1971 Constitutional Convention. I think Maria Clara Lobregat is no longer with us.
She has passed on, Mr. President. I don't know if she was mentioned. Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. President. You're correct. You're absolutely correct. I also would like to make sure that I guess I wasn't able to, like I said, forgive the errors. One error is Jose Yulo was a member of the 1935, if I'm not mistaken, and he became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court during the Japanese occupation, Mr. President. So I would later suggest that we expunge that line on
yes.
Jose Yulo, Mr. President.
Yes. So when we go into the period of amendments, we should amend that.
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you.
You know, I was with Tita Kaling in the 1992 9th Congress.
Yes.
That's why I know.
Thank you.
All right. Majority Leader, Senator Hontiveros is seeking the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for the record, Mr. President, thanking the good gentleman from Zambales on behalf of my family. I just like to confirm what the good gentleman was wondering about during his sponsorship speech, that yes, I am a granddaughter of Jose Ontiveros, who represented Capiz in the 1934 Constitutional Commission before becoming a senator of the 7th Senatorial District of Capiz and Aklan, and then finally an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. Thanks also, Mr. President, to the good gentleman, again on behalf of this representation's family, for including the delegates of the 1971 Constitutional Commission, among whom is someone of whom I am a niece, Alejandro Lichauco, who represented the 1st District of Rizal, and who was, according to a book of Aquilino, the father of our colleague, Senator Coco, Alejandro Lichauco, who was one of 4 delegates who voted behind bars in the military prison camps no to the then proposed constitution. He was one of 4 who included Napoleon Rama of Cebu, Jose Mari Velez, also of Rizal, and Teofisto Gingono Jr., also of Rizal. So once again, many thanks to the good gentleman from Zambales. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you. Now that you mentioned it, if you notice, from 1917 to the 1934 Constitution, there were 2 Sotos there, no? Pilimon Soto and Vicente Soto, they're brothers. My grandfather and my grand-uncle. And just a little trivia, we were the original proponents of political dynasty.
Yeah, it was about, Mr. President, I was about to ask you about the other Soto. There were two Sotos in that resolution.
Magkapatid, pareho senador.
I
And
see.
Constitutional Convention, yeah.
Mr. President, if I may, that's why you changed the
That's-
name. Originally, it was SOTO. It became SOTTO, Mr. President.
We recognize Senator Pimentel, Mr.
There was a
President.
history to that. There was a history to that in, I think, 1890 something.
I'd
It was
love to hear
originally
it, Mr.
1T.
President.
It is originally 1T. But in the early 19th century or 1900 something, my grandfather found out that there was in San Juan, there was a thief caught with the family name Soto, SOTO. So my grandfather was incensed and he changed our name and made it double T because he says does not have any relative who is a thief. That's the original story of the spelling, Your Honor.
That's a great story,
All right,
Mr.
Majority Leader. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Mr. President, may recognize Senator Pimentel, Mr. President.
Senator Aquilino Pimentel III is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just additional input, I was pleasantly surprised that Senator Ontiveros was reading the same book I grabbed just to review or refresh our memory of history. She mentioned the four persons who voted no behind bars. It's mentioned on page 76 of the book of my father. But according to my father, on page 75, 14 delegates, in addition to the four, voted no on the floor of the convention of the 1971 Constitutional Convention. So to complete the record, Daquila Castro, Juan T. David, Ramon Diaz, Marcelo Fernan, Andres Flores, Leon Garcia, Cedfrey Ordonez, Pacifico Ortiz, Rolando Piit, Decoroso Rosales, Jose Santillan, Margarito Teves, Jose Suarez, Pedro Yap. And according to my father, his vote was a refusal to vote. So it was it was recorded neither a yes nor a no. So it was a refusal to vote because he found the draft to be a bastardized travesty of a constitution. Hence, I refused to vote. So
Is there any mention in your book? In your book, is there any mention?
Sir?
Senator Pimentel, is in the book that you're reading, is there any mention of a CONCON delegate named Quintero?
Yes, sir. There's a chapter on a Quintero expose. So, siguro nga, one of the purposes of the resolution is for our young people and historians, all those interested, to study constitutional proposals or constitutional thinking. So, one book is my father's book, which Senator Risa consulted. So we were reading behind the scenes together. So that's for the record, Mr. President. But I'm glad that the entire resolution was read, and the purpose is to make the study of our Constitution, our Constitution's different Constitutions history, as well as encourage a way of thinking in a constitutional sense, tawagin na lang natin constitutional thinking, to encourage that. So I appreciate and I congratulate Senator Dick Gordon for thinking about this resolution and drafting it, which is quite early for the 50th anniversary of the 1971 Constitutional Convention, because that's still on June 1, 1971. And I congratulate Senator Gordon for looking so good when he was a delegate. I saw the picture and were you still a teenager then, Senator Gordon? if you look at the picture, you look like a teenager. So you may have been underage.
He would probably be 25 years old.
He may have been exempted from the minimum age, Mr. President. Look at that! Look at that image of the youngest delegate to the 1971 Constitutional Convention. So
I'm guessing he was 25.
Congratulations. Sir,
I was guessing he's around 25 years old because I was 23 years old during that time. That's why I remember Quintero.
Yes,
And,
Mr.
he was the headline and front page of all the newspapers then, the Concon delegate. But I wonder, how did he vote? Do you have it in your book? How did Quintero vote?
so if he was not mentioned in the no votes, Mr. President, he must have voted yes. So I hope part of the research that we will give this resolution is the answer to the Senate President's question. But in the book of my, judging
All
from
right.
the names listed in the book of my father, he's not among the no votes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, if I
Majority
may,
Leader.
just to
Okay,
clarify,
Senator Gordon, go ahead.
Mr. President, I was going to vote no, but Pacifico Ortiz, very prominent Jesuit, our president of the Ateneo at that time, told me to do so, and I'll give you the reason why. And then also Tata Seng Suarez of Pampanga, he grabbed me and said, "You better vote yes." I said I was going to vote no, and he said because there's going to be a constitution, there's going to be an interim batas ng pambansa, and we will need people like you there. And I took the road more traveled than the road less traveled by, Mr. President. But with respect to Delegate Quintero, sir, I was with him together with Raul Manglapus, Tito Gangona, and Chitong Lorenzo when he made his expose. And there were raids upon him. I'm sure you remember that, Mr. Senate President. And he was a former ambassador. And, he might have voted yes for the same reason that many of us were told to vote. In fact, even Voltaire Garcia called me at the time and said, would you please vote for me? Because he wanted to be in the Constitutional Convention, and then he died later, Mr. President. Raul Rocco and I were of the same vote, Mr. President. I just want to say that those were very, very difficult and exciting and challenging times. I've never been to a roller coaster that really heavy, Mr. President, with challenges, and I'm glad we weathered it, Mr. President. And that's why I thought of doing this, so that people can read the book of Nana Pimentel, Mr. President. People can research on the Constitution. The UP had a thick book on revisions to the Constitution, Mr. President. And it was a very, very difficult time in our country. The Constitutional Convention was bombed in the Manila Hotel, and when we moved to Quezon City, there was a fire. And I don't mind saying this, Mr. President, I had to go back with 2 or 3 delegates to pick up the old men, Mike Quaderno, Tomas Falgui, Mr. President, because the building was on fire and there was there was smoke going out, and we had to put them at certain areas. We had to carry. Mike Quaderno was a very slight man, and so was Delegate Falgui, and it brings back the memories of the challenges of the times. And I just hope, Mr. President, that people don't miss out, that you don't change constitutions unless you really need to do so, and create a continuing history and saga of how a country grows, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We appreciate the move of Senator Gordon to recognize all the historical personalities of that convention. Mr. President, but mine is a bit older. My great-great-grandfather was a member of also a constitutional body, but it was in the Malolos Congress. My great-great-grandfather was Pablo de Leon Ocampo. That was the secretary of the Malolos Congress and was one of the authors of the Malolos Constitution. So, yun ang aking trivia naman. Pero mas matanda yan. That's for another time and for another long discussion, Mr. President. So, Mr.
Sorry, I
President,
would
with that,
accept an amendment to include the.
Yes.
That's why I
Mr.
would
President.
include, with all due respect, an amendment
Yes,
to
Mr.
include the 1896 convention, Mr. President, Malolos Constitution. That's part of our history.
All right.
Cannot be
Yes, thank
denied.
you, Mr. President. Mr.
Okay,
President, before we
Majority
approve
Leader,
and
may
adopt
we-
it, yes.
Yes.
Before we approve
President.
and adopt, Mr. President, may we request that, with the permission of the sponsor, that all members of the Senate be made as co-authors
That's what I'm going to say.
of the measure. Yeah, Mr. President.
Well, that's the point being raised by Senator Villanueva. With the concurrence of Senator Gordon, so be it. But can we go to the period of amendments, Majority Leader?
Yes, I move to open the period of amendments, Mr. President.
As
Yes, Mr.
mentioned
President.
earlier by Senator Gordon, the eighth whereas
On the whereas,
mentioned Supreme Court.
let me show me. The matter of Jose Yulo, Mr. President. There were 3 Yulos in the Constitution. There was a junior in 1971, but my staff mistook them to be part of the 1971 Constitution. He was not even a part of the 1935 Constitution, but he became a Chief Justice. So we would have to, with all due respect, expunge his name from
Remove. And likewise, the last whereas on the second page, Maria Clara Lobregat.
Yes,
Because
Mr. President.
she
I
is
was
no
going to do
longer
that.
alive.
Yes, Mr. President, I was going to do that.
All right.
And
All right.
at the same time,
So-
just one more, Mr. President, on the matter of Arturo Tolentino, he should be part of the Senate presidents. The presidents in 1935. He became a delegate there in 1971. In 1935, he became a Senate president later on, Mr. President.
All right. Yeah, he was
Mr. President.
also a majority leader of the Senate during the time of President Marcos. When President Marcos was Senate President, the majority leader was Arturo Tolentino.
35 Constitution.
And Mr. President, with
Yes,
the permission
well,
of
just for the record.
our sponsor, he mentioned earlier if he can also include the members of the Malolos Convention, Mr. President. If that would be highly appreciated, Mr. President.
I cannot willingly, Your Honor. Like I said, this is the whole point here is to know the constitutional history, and I think I don't know. I'm going too far now, but maybe we can. The Senate can commission a book that would include that, but that's going too far. I just want to say yes, we should recognize because it showed the aspiration of a country willing to be that wanted to be free, and that's why they came out with the Malolos Constitution, Mr. President. So I would like to accept the amendment of the majority floor leader, Mr. President.
All right.
Thank you very
Hearing
much,
no
Mr. President.
objection,
We thank you.
So
Subject to
yes.
style. Subject to style.
Subject to style.
Subject
Mr.
to
President,
style. All right.
with that, Mr. President, we move to adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 585, subject to the amendments and subject to style.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Resolution 58, subject to style.
We
President,
recognize the minority floor leader, Mr.
Oh.
President.
just for the
Senator Drilon is recognized.
just for the record, then Delegate Richard Gordon was 26 years old.
Yes, Your Honor.
26. I was 1 year off.
Okay,
All right.
Mr. President.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a different matter. It's with regards to Senate Bill number 1927 earlier on the vote for cash assistance for farmers in the rice tariffication law. I would like to manifest my vote as a yes. There was a momentary glitch after the attendance call with my internet, but I would have voted yes, and so it is my request to be included and recorded as a yes vote, Mr. President.
Well, we will place that on record.
Thank you, sir.
Your manifestation will be on record. All right. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have two items left on the agenda. These are for sponsorship of certain measures. I move that, Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order Senate Bill number 1928 under Committee Report number 145. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred.
Mr. President, I move that we take up Senate Bill number 1928 under Committee Report number 145 and ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
928.
1928.
Senate Bill number 1928, an act promoting the use of microgrid systems for the total electrification of unserved and underserved areas.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize our distinguished colleague, the chairperson of the Committee on Energy, no other than Senator Sherwin T. Gatchalian of Valenzuela City.
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Mr. President, one of the key energy policy thrusts of the Department of Energy is to achieve the total electrification of all Philippine households by 2022. 100% electrification will have an enormous impact on reducing energy poverty and helping improve the overall quality of life of millions of Filipinos living in far-flung rural areas. Realizing the importance of achieving this ambitious energy policy goal, the Senate Energy Committee has dedicated significant attention to tracking the progress of the executive branch in implementing its various electrification programs. Data from the Department of Energy show that the number of unenergized households on the Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao grids combined has decreased from 2.78 million in 2017 to 1.4 million in 2020. However, almost 1 million of these unenergized households are located in Mindanao, where roughly 1 out of every 6 households are considered unenergized. Overall, Mr. President, the data suggests that there is much more work left to be done. Nakakalungkot isipin na sa panahon ng makabagong teknolohiya, marami pa rin ang napag-iiwanan. Ilang beses na tayong nakakita ng viral post sa social media ng mga batang pilit na tinatawid ang kanilang pag-aaral gamit ang gasera o sa ilalim ng poste ng kuryente, lalo na sa kanayunan. Allow me to discuss briefly a few specific challenges that must be addressed as we strive to achieve total electrification. The first challenge is the consistently rapid growth of the Philippine population and economy make total electrification a moving target. As our communities grow, the number of households that need to be electrified grows as well. For example, the Department of Energy states that the number of unenergized households nationwide actually grew between 2016 and 2017 from 2.1 to almost 2.8 million, fell around 900,000 in 2018, but once again increased to 1.6 million in 2019. Second, the traditional mindset that electrification should be done through grid extension, which has constricted the pace of electrification due to funding limitations. Just to illustrate, according to the National Electrification Administration, there are 12,672 unelectrified on-grid sitios as of June 30, 2020. For 2021, the proposed budget for NEA sitio electrification program is 1.728 billion, covering around 1,153 sitios. If the same amount is given by the national government every year, then it would take close to 10 years to electrify all these sitios. Meanwhile, the number of these sitios will continue to increase due to population growth. Third, there seems to be a disconnect between the official government definition of electrification and the actual state of electrification at the household and community levels. Many communities considered as energized by the government on paper suffer from unstable and unreliable power supply characterized by frequent rolling brownouts, and there are those in the off-grid areas which, due to power generation limitation, only have 8 to 16 hours of electricity. Since the 17th Congress, the Senate Committee on Energy started to refer these places as unserved areas, or those that do not enjoy 24-hour access to electricity due to various reasons, which should be included in the total electrification program of the government. Fourth and last, we must also consider the primary challenge that has stood in the way of achieving total electrification throughout our sprawling archipelago, figuring out how to service remote and far-flung areas where it is commercially unviable for the distribution utility to provide consumers with power through grid extension. As of 2020, NEA identified 5,261 off-grid and remote and unviable areas for electrification. Realizing that the difficulty in providing power to these areas, the Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001, or EPIRA, mandates that the electrification of these areas either through the National Power Corporation, Small Powers Utility Group, or NPC SPUG, or through qualified third parties or QTPs. These QTPs are private entities which usually build microgrids to provide an integrated generation and distribution system for the supply of electric power to these areas. What is microgrid? It is a group of interconnected loads and decentralized power generation with clearly defined electrical boundaries that acts as a single controllable entity with respect to distribution, subtransmission, or transmission grid, as the case may be. Conceptually speaking, it is exactly the same name implies. A miniature scale version of the large main grid such as the Luzon grid, for example, without incurring the expansive cost of connecting to the main grid. It is for this reason that the microgrid system are well situated to electrify unserved areas as well as underserved areas in the absence or insufficiency of the main grid connections. Furthermore, it allows the optimization of local energy resources for power generation, such as solar, wind, and even biomass. Unfortunately, the establishment of microgrid systems have been few and far between over the past 2 decades. As of September 2019, there are only 6 QTP microgrid projects that service less than 7,000 households nationwide. Meanwhile, an additional 8 microgrids operated by various entities such as electric co-ops and private corporations are serving around 4,000 households. Mr. President, against the backdrop of our original goal of 100% electrification and identification of microgrid technology as the power tool to achieve this goal, I am proud to sponsor Senate Bill number 1928, or the Microgrid Systems Act. This legislation seeks to address the challenges above by promoting the development of microgrid system as a means to provide quality, reliable, secure, and affordable supply of electric power in unserved and underserved areas nationwide, as we seek to accelerate total electrification and power, rural development, and poverty reduction. Allow me to discuss briefly some of the measure's salient points. Under this bill, QTP will now be known as microgrid system providers, whose mandate is now expanded to both unserved area and underserved areas, the latter to include off-grid and remote and unviable areas. Essentially, this means that microgrid system providers will be allowed to operate in any area where there is either no electricity access at all or where the power connection does not provide 24/7 electricity supply, thus expanding the potential scope of operations to the 12,672 unelectrified on-grid sitios or 5,261 off-grid and remote and unviable areas nationwide. One way to speed up the development of microgrid system and electrify these unserved and underserved areas as soon as possible is to cut red tape. In line with this, our bill simplifies and expedites the government permitting process for microgrid systems as compared to the already accelerated permitting timeline under Republic Act number 11234 or the Energy Virtual One-Stop Shop Act. The applicable permitting timeframes are cut in half for microgrid systems under this legislation. Meanwhile, this act also provides for the conduct of a competitive selection process, which can be an auction or Swiss challenge, among others, to ensure that only the most prosumer microgrid service provider service contracts are awarded. Preference will be given to sources of energy which are low cost, indigenous, renewable, and environmentally friendly, which are 0.75 to 1 peso per kilowatt hour cheaper compared to pure diesel systems. Mapailawan ang buong bansa. Dahil sa ipinapatupad na enhanced community quarantine sa maraming lugar, nahinto rin ang serbisyo sa pagkakabit ng kuryente. Pinalala pa ang sitwasyon ng nagdaang magkakasunod na bagyo na nagpatumba ng ilang poste ng kuryente. Ginong Pangulo, hindi man maatim na hayaan na lang na nangangapa sa dilim ang marami sa ating mga kababayan. Kaya't minarapat nating isulong ang panukalang ito nang sa gayon ay mapabilis ang paglalagay ng mga struktura sa pagpapailaw sa kasuluk-sulukan ng bansa. In sum, Mr. President, this legislation seeks to empower the private sector as a valuable partner in the government's quest for total Philippine electrification by expanding the scope and reach of microgrid system and their service providers. This expansion is based on 2 decades of experience under EPIRA, with its modest achievements and clear shortcomings with regard to third-party operations. 2020 is fast approaching, and along with it, the Department of Energy's self-imposed deadline to achieve 100 electrification for all Philippine households. It is a daunting task indeed, but one which would become significantly more feasible with the passage of this legislation. Based on the foregoing, Mr. President, I humbly enjoin our esteemed colleagues to join me in advocating for the swift passage of this important energy legislation. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study the measure, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1928.
Hearing no objection, consideration is suspended.
Before we take up, Mr. President, the last item on the agenda, I forgot to congratulate and greet a very happy birthday to our minority floor leader, Senator Franklin M. Drilon, who celebrated his birthday last week. Of course, we were suspended, suspended session until today. So happy birthday to our minority floor leader,
yes.
sir.
But,
Thank you very much.
All right, because we are celebrating his birthday virtually, does that excuse him from sending something here in the lounge?
No, it just set the date.
You can send us the very delicious patchoy from Iloilo and the
All right.
chicken nila from Iloilo. Napakasarap.
Yeah, we will look forward to it on Wednesday.
Wednesday. Done.
Wednesday. Because we don't have
Request,
sessions
Mr.
tomorrow.
President, pwede ba mag-request Monday na lang? Nandyan kasi ako next month. next.
Okay, Monday. All right.
Kaya pwede mag-request ng take-out.
Okay. Done.
Monday, nandyan po tayo. That's the last week of
Monday,
session.
Yeah, even
Yes.
Senator Pimentel will be here on Monday.
Yes, that's right.
All right.
So thank you, Mr. President. Moving forward, Mr. President, I move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order Senate Bill number 1933 under Committee Report number 147. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, so transferred.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we take up Senate Bill number 1933 under Committee Report number 147 with the permission of the body and ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 1933, an act establishing the rules and policies on the domestic administrative adoption proceeding of Filipino and for other purposes.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have three distinguished colleagues who will sponsor the measure, of course, starting with the chairperson, our distinguished colleague from Antique, and from Panay Island and the Republic of the Philippines. She's from Capiz, by the way. Mr. President, Senator Risa Ontiveros. After which we have the distinguished colleagues, our distinguished colleagues, Senator Grace Poe and Senator Bong Revilla Jr. May we recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros, Mr. President.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized to sponsor the measure, and thereafter Senator Grace Poe and Senator Bong Revilla.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Mr. President, it's my honor to sponsor today Committee Report 147, or the Domestic Administrative Adoption Act. This committee report consolidates Senate Bills 1070 and 1337, filed respectively by Senator Grace Poe and Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. Mr. President, noong committee hearing para sa bill na ito, nadinig ko mismo ang hirap at sakit na pinagdadaanan ng mga adoptive parents sa ilalim ng kasalukuyang pamamaraan ng pag-aampon. Ang average na panahon ng pag-aantay para maging final ang adoption ay 2 to 3 years at may iba pa na umaabot ng 4 years pataas. According to the statistics, only 60% of adoption cases were finalized within 1 to 3 years. Ang nagagastos ay daan-daan libo kung isusuma ang lahat ng babayaran. The process itself, Mr. President, disincentivizes undergoing the legal process of adopting a child. So much so that according to the Department of Social Work and Development, only around 2,000 children have been placed for domestic adoption from 2010 to 2018. Desperate individuals are pushed to circumvent the law and undertake informal adoptions. These informal adoptions, however, offer scant protection to both the adopted child and the adoptive parents. To quote the poignant words of one parent, "Why does an act of goodness done in the legally correct way have to be so prohibitive and expensive?" Sinisikap tugunan ng panukalang batas na ito ang ganitong suliranin. This bill will allow domestic adoptions to be undertaken via an administrative process within the DSWD. This will dispense with the lengthy process associated with judicial adoption and will abbreviate the waiting time of adoptive parents to 6 to 9 months. Matatapatan nito ang panahon ng pagdadalang tao ng isang ina. It's my fervent desire as chair of the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality in the Senate that this legislative measure will encourage more parents to adopt children who need loving homes and caring families. Ang bawat bata ay mahalaga. Ang bawat bata ay nangangailangan ng tahanan. Mr. President, please allow me to end with a short Christmas reflection. A few days ago, I read somewhere that the story of Christmas is not just a story of salvation, it is also a story of adoption. Ang kwento ng Pasko ay di lang kwento ng sanggol sa sabsaban. Ito'y kwento din ng isang karpinterong, si Jose, na buong puso at buong ligayang tinanggap ang anak na di galing sa kanya bilang pagtatalima sa Diyos Ama. Jesus was Joseph's non-biological child, but he cared for him with all of himself, with all he could give. Each adoption story, therefore, each story of a family created by love and the conscious decision to love, is a story that reflects all that is beautiful and true about Christmas. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Magandang hapon po muli sa inyong lahat. There's a proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. It is a powerful statement that means that each of us is responsible to and responsible for the next generation. But sadly, many children are bereft of the love and the care that come with a family home. According to the Department of Social Welfare and Development, from the years 2009 to September 2020, a total of 7,890 children have been declared legally available for adoption because they were found to be either an abandoned, neglected, or dependent child, or voluntarily surrendered by their biological parents or legal guardians. I believe that adopting one child may not change the world, but it will certainly change the world for that child. Unfortunately, adoption in the Philippines is currently a long and costly and tedious process. This has discouraged many potential loving parents from pursuing adoption. As of today, DSWD says that there are 4,943 children under their care who are waiting for a permanent home. Under the current law, as Senator Hontiveros discussed, the administrative phase takes about 3 to 6 months plus an additional 1 to 3 years for the judicial phase. Thus, I filed a bill that provides for a process of a domestic administrative adoption, which eliminates the judicial phase. This is also practiced in many countries abroad, it will not be the first here in the Philippines. This will accelerate the entire process, minimize the cost, and declog our courts na marami ng kaso nakabinbin. Previous state policies such as Republic Act number 9523 or the Administrative Declaration of the Child legally available for adoption have recognized that administrative processes under jurisdiction of the DSWD are the most expeditious proceedings for the best interest and welfare of the child. In our bill, procedural safeguards are in place, such as the following documentary requirements: a home study report conducted by a licensed social worker on the adopter, a child study report conducted by a licensed social worker for adoptee, the certification declaring the child legally available for adoption, a mandatory result of psychological evaluation of the prospective adoptive parents, and an NBI police clearance. Further, a matching process of the child to approved prospective parents will be conducted by a child welfare specialist group. In addition to that, petition for adoption will be published upon filing so that any person with information that could protect the child from harm can interpose an objection. Sa aking mga kasama sa Senado, ito po ay malapit sa aking puso. Sapagkat sa aking pinagdaanan at pinagdaanan ng aking magulang, nakita ko po ang hirap ng prosesong ito. Ako po ay grade 1 na, hindi pa malinaw ang aking birth certificate. Ito po ay dumadaan pa sa proseso ng hustisya. Mabuti na lang may kakayanan ng aking mga magulang na gawing legal ang aking pagkatao sa ating bansa, sa ating batas. Kung hindi, siguro fast forward sa mga taon na ito, ay wala rin ako dito nakasama ninyo na tumutulong para mapabuti naman ang buhay ng ating mga kababayan sa pamamagitan ng mga batas na ipinapasa natin. So ito po ay para sa pagkakataon ng mga batang napulot, ng mga batang naabandona dahil sa iba't ibang mga dahilan. Sana ay mapadali ang proseso at mapamura para mas maraming mga magulang ang magkaroon ng pagkakataon na magkaroon ng anak na kanilang mamahalin. Kaya maraming salamat sa aking mga kasamahan dyan, kay Senator Bong Revilla na nag-file din ng kanyang version ng bill, at lalong-lalo na kay Senator Risa Hontiveros sa pag-prioritize nitong measure na ito. With this bill, it is my hope that more Filipinos will be able to adopt children because every child deserves a good home, a family, and the future. Tandaan po natin na ang pamilya ay nasa puso, hindi lamang sa dugo. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Senator Bong Revilla is recognized.
Mr. President, Senator Bong Revilla would just like to insert to the records his sponsorship of the measure, Mr. President.
I see. Okay, we will place that on record. Senator Revilla will submit his sponsorship speech.
And Mr. President,
George Revilla.
with the permission of the authors, may I be a made co-author as well as Senator Nancy Binay be made co-authors of this measure?
And Senator Cayetano.
And Senator
Mr.
Cayetano
Senator
to be
Pia
recognized.
Cayetano is recognized.
Yes, I'm just asking to be recognized. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, dear colleagues, I'd also just like to manifest my support for this measure. I believe it is public knowledge that I am an adoptive parent. I am an adoptive single mother. I have gone through that actual process. I know what it is like. I belong to support groups of other adoptive parents and their children. And I have personally experienced with on my own and with them the joy and pain and difficulty of adopting a child in this country. Mr. President, thanks to my job, I actually had the opportunity to first foster care my son. I was the chairperson of the Committee on Women, Children and Family Relations in 2010 onward. And during that time, I was hearing a number of bills. And around that time, I also was inspired and I felt the timing was right for me to bring another child into our home. This all happened around the same time that we were working on alternative care bills, including the Foster Care Act, which is now a law. That was around 2012, if I'm not mistaken. In the 17th Congress from 2016 to 2019, I was a member of the House of Representatives. And at that time, the House had many bills on alternative care. One of them was similar to the bill that we are tackling now on administrative adoption. But they also had bills consolidating or codifying various types of adoptions, various types of alternative care, including foster care, guardianship, and adoption. And it is something that I ended up working on, perhaps because of both my personal and professional experience on these issues, Mr. President. So fast forward back in the Senate today, Mr. President, I also filed my Senate Bill number 61, which is the alternative care bill, which, as I said, codifies all of these. And it also does include non-judiciary adoption process, Mr. President. I am a very big supporter of that because, like I said, I know what that process is like. But I want to put on record, and obviously I will spread this out during the proper time, the period of interpellation and the period of amendment, that the bottleneck is not just with the judiciary. Obviously, I think all of us can understand na nakakatagal doon. Kahit anong kaso, matagal sa judiciary. Pati ho itong adoption, matagal din sa judiciary. But I do not want our colleagues to be to not have the whole truth, know all the facts. The fact is, because the DSWD is severely undermanned, DSWD's primary focus, if you just look at how they have been focusing, is to intervene during times of calamities. Napag-iiwanan po yung 1.8 million abandoned, neglected, motherless, fatherless, childless, abused children ng Pilipinas. And that is why I do not have much hope in the current structure, which is, how the bill will place with DSWD the power to grant the adoption. Again, at the proper time, I will discuss this. But what I really just wanted to make clear is that I support this move to move from the judiciary to a non-judiciary setting. But I would like our colleagues to really dive deep into this issue, because sa pag-interview, Senator Grace very accurately mentioned the steps that we must go through. Yung home study, pinagdaanan ko po yan. Pupunta ang DSWD social worker sa bahay mo, titignan niyo yung bahay niyo, kamusta ba kayo dyan sa bahay niyo, may aso ba kayo, may pusa ba kayo, may mga family problems ba kayo. Can you just imagine how much time and energy this takes? If you just count the number of social workers who will do this, to the number of times they should go back. And this is not even computerized, sulat kamay yan. So there's just so much that goes into this. Hindi pa to nakarating sa judiciary. A lot of the delay and bottleneck is with DSWD itself. So, and this is not just me, this is also the advocates who attended these hearings, they testified to that. So I pray and hope that the sponsor would have an open mind on how we can tackle this problem, because I think all of us are one in wanting to provide a home for these children at the soonest possible time, but the right home as well. Because the counterpart of the opposite side of the coin of a hasty process is the danger of trafficking, or of the children being mismatched and not being put into good homes. So I just want to place that on record, Mr. President. Again, I support the chair on this, but I'd really like time to be able to find really the best solution for our children. Alam niyo ho yun, na during the budget, I raised the fact na yung 35 million pesos lang na budgetary requirement for personnel in DSWD, hanggang ngayon hindi pa na-release. That was for 2020 budget. So, yung pa lang hindi nagagawa, what more pa we will put in their hands yung pag-decide sa mga sa the actual decision or where to place these children. If there will not be sufficient budgetary support, training, and all that, I'm really saddened and scared by how the outcome of this will be. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Mr. President, just
Yes, Senator Grace po.
just a short manifest. In fact, I really appreciate Senator Pia's advocacy for this. Of course, her personal situation. And this is also my opportunity to thank you for the record, Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Cynthia Villar, of course, Senate President Tito Soto, Senator Bam Aquino, Senator Lauren Legarda, those who supported me during the SET hearings. That was the first step, also recognizing the rights of an adopted child because of all the legal implications, the naturalization, etc. So that was the first step. So thank you for that, because I really wouldn't be here without your understanding and without your compassion. So thank you.
All right.
Mr. President.
Yes, Senator Ontiveros.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record also, I wish to express my appreciation for the good gentlewoman from Taguig and Pateros's support for administrative adoption. I appreciate her advocacy about alternative care, and I certainly prize her irreplaceable experience, direct personal experience as an adoptive parent herself, and also as an advocate working with civil society advocates on these different issues. Certainly, with my open mind, I will at the proper time in the periods of interpellation and debate receive her questions and her proposals, seeking also to try to convince the whole chamber that indeed this bill was from the Department of Social Welfare and Development. They assured us of their capacity, and with the good gentlewoman's help and the help of all the colleagues, I'll continue to try to push for the capacitation of DSWD. And most important of all, Mr. President, good gentlewoman, and all colleagues, the advocates themselves support this bill for administrative adoption, and as they see it best or most optimal now within the DSWD. So just for the record for now, Mr. President, and looking forward indeed to the periods of interpellation and amendments. Salamat po, good gentlewoman. Salamat po, Mr. President.
All right.
Mr.
Just
President?
before that, just to add a little levity, has the sponsor watched the movie Orphan?
I'm not sure, Mr. President. Do you remember the actors, Mr. President?
No, but no, just I suggest you watch it para pagdating ng period of interpellations, you will have the proper safeguards.
The proper safeguards, Mr. President.
Yes.
Netflix ba yun,
Anyway,
Mr.
as I
President?
said, that's
Netflix
just
ba
to
yun?
add a little levity. Majority Leader, hindi mo ko napanood mo.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study the measure, we move to suspend consideration of the same.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Consideration suspended.
Mr. President, with that, I move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, December 9, 2020. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? The chair hears none. The session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, December 9, 2020.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Tito Frank, and welcome back, Bato.